So, this is Senate Appropriations, and we're still working on the budget adjustment. We have with us today people, and I'm not sure of the right order to go in, will testify regarding, sort of a collaborative initiative that would involve the acquisition of, property, an armory and waterbury and, purchase, and how that could potentially help address a need that we're all so well aware of. So perhaps we could start with military, since you seem to be kind of the beginning point in terms of what is precipitating this discussion, what you have for the opportunity for a replacement building, the land, and how it frees up the property, the armory and waterbury. So I can have the Deputy Adjutant General. Good to see you again.
Yes.
And we'll start with you, and you can kind of explain what's happening on the military side, and then we'll go to, the state property and potential use from there.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Deputy Adjutant General Ken Bright, happy to be here. So long and short of it is the Vermont National Guard has the Waterbury Armory, and it was vacant due to the unit that was there, an artillery unit that was transferred to the Massachusetts National Guard. And the facility became available, and we were prepared, working through the Board of Armory Commissioners to dispose of the property, sell it. And we've gone through the effort of getting appraisal, got the property basically prepared to sell, and July came and the floods came. And subsequently, the governor asked if we could hold on to the property and make it available to FEMA as one of the intake sites, which they occupied, I think, till the middle of October. Once they left, we regrouped and we reached back to the administration, letting them know we were getting prepared to dispose of the property. And we were asked to hold tight because the state of Vermont felt that there was a valuable need for the property. In the process of all that, that in itself wasn't really a problem. But what became an issue or a concern for the military, for the National Guard and military department, is we have a very old aged facility in St. Albans. As a matter of fact, it's on the historical register, 1940. And it desperately needs some quality of life improvements. And because we were looking at a good 10, 12, 15 years before we would see a replacement armory up in that area to help that situation. Got into the facility for evaluation estimates and determined that the facility was laced with PCBs through the entire building. Now, what I will say is none of it's airborne from a safety perspective. Nothing is airborne, but what it's precluded us from doing is we basically can't do any work. We basically can't disturb the facility. Needs a new boiler. When it goes, we're going to be in a quandary what to do. Just needs significant air handling.
It's not in use right now.
Yes, we have about 35 or 40.
No, there's about 70.
Oh, is it 70? I'm sorry. In that location. But again, the building is safe. It's not, the hazards aren't airborne. But with that situation and knowing we could not do some of these renovations and some of the risks with the building as far as heat plant and air quality and or air movement and stuff like that, we felt that it was important to maybe look at other options to maybe accelerate what was a 10 to 12 year plan to build a new armory, try to accelerate that. The congressional delegation's willing to take on that effort. But part of that process to be in your timeline is to be competitive, we need to either be very, very close to owning the property or owning the property that the building would be built on.
That's a new
A
facility.
brand new $30 million armory. So the challenge is the plan to buy land was, we had recently sold the Linden FMS field maintenance facility. It was a closed facility, been closed for several years. It got sold to a private party. We had $190,000 from that, and the building in Waterbury appraised for $890,000. So they gave us over $1 million to go try to find a piece of property. The problem is we don't have the $890,000. What occurs in the submission process on behalf of the congressional delegation, they have a timeline they have to be on. And one of the key timelines is the particular office submits their earmark or congressional ad, if you will, to the central budget office by April 15th. So back up realistically 60+ days to acquire a piece of property. And we're in that window of needing to sign a purchase agreement. Fortunately, we have a piece of property identified. We actually have a drafted purchase agreement ready to sign. It's 40 acres on exit 20, on exit 20, Swan, St. Albans border.
Sounds like putting the highway garage.
Next door, right next door to AOT. So we're prepared to do that, but we're not in a position to sign a purchase agreement with not knowing we have our funding source.
So basically, what we have before us is a proposal for the state to acquire the Waterbury Armory. That would give you the necessary
Yes, ma'am.
funding you need to move forward with your St. Albans replacement
Yes,
plan.
yes. Because the fact of the matter is, left to our own devices, the building would already be sold. And we would have those proceeds already.
So this is giving sort of the state the first option. Which obviously the determination is that that would be a positive purchase to make, but we'll have the administration speak to that as well.
Yes, ma'am. I don't get.
So April 15th, so there's a time sensitivity here as well.
For us.
That's why we're taking up.
Those are ballpark dates. That's the historical dates that the Congressional Budget Office takes those earmarks from the delegation.
Is that a sure deal? Or would you be without you? Well, you don't need this anyway, so you're,
We don't need what we,
the Waterbury Armory.
no, we don't.
No,
That's
so it doesn't matter.
And the fact of the matter is the benefit of this earmark will accelerate the project many, many years. And if we don't get that opportunity, we'll be in the 10 to 12 year time range before we see another opportunity. And at that point, we would be competing nationally with all national guards in the country to DOD for the Department of Defense for those dollars. Whereas this would be earmarked. And
All right, questions?
Well, the only one is earmarks are not, as far as my knowledge goes, they're not guaranteed. It depends on who's running the committee and the whole 9 yards. And what committee is it, the earmark going to go before?
well, it'll go to Senate budget before it goes to Senate Appropriations.
Well, Senator Sanders.
Right.
Yeah. And
Both actually, Senator Sanders and Senator Welch are both interested in bringing this forward.
But either way, this property, you're gonna put on the market because you don't need it.
Yes, ma'am.
So regardless of what happens with that, hopefully that federal funding will all fall into place, but
Yes,
we're still dealing with, you could have sold this and you've held off
yes, ma'am.
pending discussion with the administration.
And this piece of land, whether it's we get to build it near term or
Just keep going up.
well, and we have it secured versus in the current market instead of 15 years from now.
Other questions? Adjutant General, Deputy Adjutant General, my goodness.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I don't see any, questions at this point.
I think it's similar, we had a similar situation in Bennington when we fell through because of certain numbers, but when we can open a new armory and use the old one for community enhancement, it's a great idea.
Thank you then.
Yes, ma'am.
So our, next witness is Commissioner Winters, but I also see, Secretary Clauser here, so I don't know if you both want to come up or, and I also see we have everybody else commissioner, right? We have
Every question you might have, we're ready.
And we were just here for questions, if there were questions. I think General Bragg covered really what I would say, which was we were in conversations with the military and asked for them to hold off selling this on the open market because we saw estate use. But I'm happy to answer some additional questions.
So for the
If
record,
those
that
come
was
up.
Secretary Clauser, speaking, on behalf of the administration. And we have, I guess she's deferring to you, Commissioner Winters, now that, we've had, Deputy Adjutant General Bragg talk to us about what their role in providing this opportunity, to state government. You can take it from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Chris Winters. I'm the Commissioner of the Department for Children and Families. And as the Deputy Adjutant General has described, this presents a good opportunity for them and a good opportunity for AHS to be able to take advantage of a newly state-owned property as part of the solution for temporary shelters starting on April 1st. As this committee is well aware, there's $4 million in the DAA for that purpose. We are attempting to stand up as many shelter beds as we possibly can in 5 communities by April 1st. And this could be one more tool in the toolbox to address that. And so we think we can have 40 to 50 beds in the armory on a temporary basis. And this just starts the process rolling there.
How many?
40 to 50.
And the community is aware of the proposed plan. You've been having discussions with the community.
So this is very fast moving. I will say that the town manager and the select board are aware and let them know that I'm testifying here today. I think the community in general is not aware of this yet, Waterbury in general. But we do plan to have that outreach with the town.
And once again, the purchase price is $875.
$890.
$890. Okay, so, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. I really don't have much more to add unless there are questions, but just to say that this is part of the overall plan for additional shelter capacity starting April 1st, when the June cohort is set to exit, when others are coming out of adverse weather conditions. I understand the legislature is going to take a look at that and perhaps do something different, but we still believe that this will be helpful to our overall shelter capacity and trying to move away from our reliance on the hotels and motels.
Yes, Senator
I don't want to take us in a completely different direction because it sounds like something we absolutely need. It's a good idea to move forward with this. But just out of interest, the fit up for the shelter will cost some money. That will also come out of the, are you thinking of taking it out of the $4 million that's in the VAA? And then what residual will be left for additional shelters?
That's right, Senator. We don't have all of the numbers on that yet, but we're working closely with BGS to do the fit up in what they call minimum code requirements, the sprinklering and things like that to make sure it's follows the law when it comes to occupying it overnight. And that will come out of those $4 million. We have a lot of different projects we're working on. A few have fallen through, a few different ones are coming online. So we're kind of putting all of our time and effort into that right now, do as many as we can within that $4 million.
Yes, Senator.
How many acres, is it all that green space behind there part of the land purchasing?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if anyone's. It's the actual acreage, it's right around 4 acres maximum. There's not really a whole lot of green space because the interstate backs right up against the armory. So actually the interstate fence line is just on the outskirts
So
of.
behind like the Great Brook, that kind of forested area, is that somebody else on that? I was just looking
Yeah,
at the
that's-
Google map.
Yeah, that's another
Like
parcel.
all this space.
Yeah,
That's another parcel.
that's another parcel, yeah.
Okay. So the parcel really is like the parking lot and the building and the corners of. the
It's
interstate.
pretty condensed, yes.
And then there, who would be staffing that be to be determined then
It,
soon?
it is to be determined. We had, last summer when we were looking at staffing shelters, and emergency shelters, we had an RFP. We had 3 responses to that. I think a 4th came in after. So we're going back to those, providers to get an updated bid from them. And it'll come from one of those 4 providers, the staffing.
And that's somebody in central Vermont that could, you feel confident to be able to.
Probably not someone local. It's some of them are out of state companies. But they do specialize in this. What I can say is that we've approached some of the local providers. They're all stretched.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, like, they can't do it, so.
Our preference would be to have them, and
Right.
in fact, we approached the Good Samaritan, Haven. But they just weren't able to, they felt like they would be overextended.
Yeah.
Trying to do something.
Other questions, Sergeant?
Yeah, so most armors or auditoriums they're high. A lot of wasted space, or you're gonna have 2 floors or 1? Or
What we're doing is the minimum amount of work in there that we can to keep costs down moving that forward.
because what's the cost of the retrofit to get it ready so we can open?
I guess that would be Commissioner Fitch would have to answer that question, and maybe that's yet to be determined, but if you want to respond, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Jennifer Fitch, and that's correct. We're still working out a cost estimate at this time, so I don't have a number to offer today.
Because just figuring a bare building, that's about, $10,000 a bed that you're gonna have into this.
You're talking about the purchase price?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta look at the full price and if you max it out at 50 beds, it's 17,000 something a bed. And
Well, we're
what else?
spending
is-
more than that for motels.
We've spent.
We're spending on that for more. And so that's the dilemma here, is to bring on more capacity until we get more permanent, housing, developed. So, our choice is to try to do more of these kinds of alternatives, to motels. And that's the dilemma that is confronting the administration. And it's confronting us as well, because, when we did the budget adjustment and there was the 8.2 million to get us through June.
June 30.
And to get us the 4 million, at the time, the number of beds that would bring online was quite a bit short of the 680
It is.
households that are currently receiving, are in that June cohort. So this helps sort of close that gap need versus capacity.
And the $890,000 purchase price, it becomes it's a state asset at that point. It's not gonna be used as a shelter. Definitely.
And
Go ahead.
we had the property appraised by our appraiser. Pardon?
Military has had an appraisal.
Well, yeah, but they might have had
You think perhaps the price is inflated? Is that your concern?
well, it could be. Not saying that it isn't, but it
So,
certainly could be. When you're buying something, you take their appraisal, but you also have your own done. And if it's different, you kind of settle in the middle, but
So Colonel Jake Roy with the with regard, so the appraisal was developed by an independent state appraiser, contracted appraiser, so they're certified by the state to do appraisals. So it wasn't just the military department doing its self-appraisal, it was an independent contractor that was hired to actually do the appraisal. So
But that was your concern that somehow it was done in-house then.
Well, yeah, it makes it a little better having an independent do it, but.
I guess we could ask the commissioner, you obviously are dealing a lot with property and values and so forth. I gather, you must have an opinion in terms of the, the legitimacy or accuracy of the appraisal. So we would speak to that.
We are very similar to the military. We appraise our properties and use a third-party independent appraisal, again, that's licensed. And so we have reviewed the appraisal from military and we support the findings in that appraisal. It's done the same way it's done for BGS.
Senator Sears.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Murphy's Law and your timeline. According to this, you need to have a sales agreement in place by February 15th at the latest. Is that still correct?
That's the Vermont National Guard for its property in St. Albans or Swan. That's unrelated to the Waterbury. Unfortunately, these are blurred. There's kind of two things happening at the same time. The transition of the Waterbury Armory to BGS
The St.
and the
Albans
military
one is-
departments.
You're not in a rush on this one.
Well, the issue is without the proceeds from it, we can't buy the land in Swan. And without the land in Swan, we can't go forward to the congressional
But
delegation.
you need this by the 15th of February, and I was really, you
Yes.
don't need it by the 15th.
No,
we do.
You
we,
do need it by the 15th.
You need some kind of
You need
affirmation.
an agreement that the
Yeah.
money is coming.
Okay,
So
but
it's like,
you know,
they say, we're
Because
gonna.
you're just
so we
wondering-
passed this bill.
Would it get through in time for, but I think you said you had till really April, you just need to have some verification that the sale is in progress or whatever.
That's,
Maybe you could be clear, so Senator Sears.
Maybe I'm just unfamiliar with buying property in 3 different places. It looks like we've involved Massachusetts,
no,
which took over they took over the Waterbury, right?
no, sir. The unit that was in the Waterbury Armory was divested to Massachusetts, the
Okay.
people.
I thought they went to Franklin County, Mass, and I got confused here too. So you're talking about purchased land in Franklin County, Vermont.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Well, if you want to purchase land in Franklin County, that needs to be done by the 15th.
We should be under a contract by the 15th of February so that we can increase our odds of being able to close on the property
Okay,
by April 15th.
and then once the sales agreement is reached, you need it by 60 days.
April 15th, yes. That's the goal.
15th. Okay, so you got plenty of time.
And I will add, Senator,
well,
from the.
sort of.
From the AHS side of the equation, we are in a rush and we are trying to move
And
this.
you're trying to get this done by April 1st.
April 1st.
So
Boy, there are a lot of,
a lot of timelines here. So I just worried about the timelines, but now I understand more clearly which one is the February 15th.
And if I could, sir, to help facilitate this, I believe BGS has had access to the property for the last couple of weeks to start their process.
that is correct. We already have a construction manager on board. We're already working very closely with DCF. We have a fit up plan and right now we're just waiting on pricing.
You've got a lot of faith in us.
Well, it's you, yes.
it's this committee, if you want to know the truth. I mean, it's gonna get this, initiated. But I think in one breath, we had a lot of discussion about, we just needed to build more capacity and this obviously adds to what's there. And so, the location certainly.
We'll make that. I don't have a problem with this plan. I'm
No, I
not for
think you
it.
do.
It's other parts of the bill.
Oh, of the budget adjustment?
Yeah, which I might have.
Oh,
But that was
Well-
my question, so the question is putting this into the
Yeah.
BA area.
I think that-
Which we don't have.
they're voting on it, but we will have it by the end of the
They're
week.
voting on it.
The House is voting on it.
Are they
So-
putting this, but they're too late to put it in?
Yeah.
Would it be wise to put this in a separate bill and rush it through?
I think we should have the budget adjustment out, just as my goal is that we would have most everything wrapped up by a week from tomorrow. We've gone through, and then we'll just decide where we need more testimony, so, I think, we should be able to get close to that February 14th, which isn't exactly a drop dead date, to be honest, based on what you're saying. You just need to have the confidence that things are moving forward. So, but
Well,
that's a good question. Do we
Yeah.
want to move it out separately, or do we want to move it as part of the
so
VA?
far, I think everybody's agreed that this is a good thing and that. So sometimes it's behooves us, you never know what's in the bill that will hold it up in one body or another.
Right.
Or what might get added that will.
So there'll be a conference committee, I assume, on the VA.
Yeah, there will. There will be. Well, we can have more discussion about the vehicle and exactly how we want to move
Will
it.
not be here next Thursday. That'll be information.
Okay, next Thursday is.
I will be here Friday, but we'll be by Zoom.
The first,
On the first, I'll be here. First Thursday, I won't be here.
Thursday the
Friday, I
first.
will be.
So, but you have to be here on Groundhog Day.
I will be here on Groundhog Day by remotely if it works.
Sears remote, and then on the
if you
first,
don't see your chef.
Sears you're just
I
out.
probably won't see myself
Your
because
chef.
after the operation, I have to stay home for 5 days.
Well, okay. We'll do our best.
No, I'm
obviously,
available.
Okay.
Just
the fact that you're gonna be out.
So we understand that, community shelters with multiple folks, and it sounds like you're gonna have beds lined up, and that not really the best solution to all of this, but it is a beginning. And it will probably cost more to fit up after it's being utilized initially. I'm thinking there's gonna be a lot of reorganization going on with people and places and kids and so on. At some point, if it continues to be a home, it's gonna have to require some changes to be more accommodating to people not living in one great big
I
giant.
don't know if it's a dormitory style.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the commissioner could clarify that. I thought I had heard that in fact the fit up would provide private space.
I can speak to that, and of course, congregate shelters are not the best practice. We would do non-congregate whenever we could, and some of our other options do provide for that. This would be congregate, but would have plywood separations, so creating some spaces within. We would take a close look at who we refer to this shelter to make sure they're a good fit. Ideally, not families with children. But there will be some fit up with, I think, reusing some existing barriers that we have from some other purposes with beds and separate spaces. The plywood barriers, as I understand it, are also wired. So there'd be electricity to each space, but it's still fairly open. It's as described earlier, it's big high ceilings. But we would create privacy to the extent that we could.
It's understood.
And, bath facilities, bathrooms, how many of those are in the?
Yeah, the our BGS partners are taking a look at that to make sure we have enough and appropriate for all genders, and we may have to add a little bit to the bathroom facilities that are existing.
So
That'll be part of the pickup.
there's several there already, or?
That's
I'm not-
correct, there's two, well, Angela, you probably better speak to what's there, I can.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
You
men's
wanna put
room.
yourself on the ground?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Angela Trahan. I'm with Military Department in Property. There's a men's room with a few showers in it, and the women's room also has showers in them. Multiple stalls, yeah, for each, yeah.
And I,
And there's there's one single occupancy as well.
Then the other question I have, how far from the village where these folks can eat and get food or whatever?
So part of for creating a shelter there is having food on site. So we'll be making arrangements for that. But we also have to look at transportation, people to be able to get to, if they want to go get groceries or services that they may need. A lot of them are connected with community providers for various services to help them be successful and get to more permanent housing. We're looking at transportation there, perhaps adding a bus stop.
So you're having a
perhaps
discussion with public transit then?
We are.
Yeah, because it's ways from the village.
It is. Ideally, a shelter is located where you can walk to those kinds of services, but we're working with what we have.
Other questions? Anyone here who's come that has information that they would like to share that, we have not, addressed through questions? Mr. Fitch, you all set? Secretary Clauser?
I think you've covered everything. Happy to work on the vehicle. I think there are some options, so we're happy to work with folks if that's helpful.
All right.
I would say you can walk the town route. So,
Depending on.
yeah, mobility issue.
How far is it? Size travel.
What's the name of that restaurant?
That's a
Quarter of a mile?
to a half a mile.
Well, there's a restaurant out in Speed too, like gas station and stuff.
In Waterbury?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I
Not far
think,
from that.
no, not far from the road, right.
There's
Recontoured Waterbury over the years, so. Other comments or questions? Well, we can have some discussion in terms of the timeline and, you know, should we, and Senator Sears is questioning whether we should pull this out, move it forward, in a more expeditious way. But look at your timeline as well. It seems like the main thing is to have some affirmation of the purchase on the part of the state. And you would need that piece of by February 14th, but April 15th is really your drop dead date.
well, that's when we hope to buy it by.
Huh?
Right,
Yeah.
I think February 15th, the affirmation would be by February
Right,
15th.
right, yeah.
For them to purchase the property. The
To sign
April deadline
contract.
is
To sign a purchase
for the
agreement.
earmark.
Okay, all right.
You need it April 1st, right? You need it up and running.
Well, it's.
That's right.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
for emergency shelter capacity, yes.
And they've been very, very gracious with the access, and so we really have full access to it now to begin preparing.
But you have to pass the DAA to have the money to do that anyway.
So we should do a separate bill.
Well, that's something we can talk about. What is the best mechanism, looking at the timeline? We could,
My experience with BAAs is sometimes they get stuck on things that we least expect.
I know. So we can have some further discussion on that. The main thing is to get the testimony, get consensus from the committee in terms of proceeding, and recognizing that this is pretty time sensitive for a host of reasons in this situation. And, if our determination is to move it in a separate bill, we can obviously do that.
Thank you.
So appreciate everyone coming today. We'll move forward. I think the committee understands the need for it. It seems to be kind of a nice convergence of available property, and you can move into, then you've got to deal with your other property there that seems to have some environmental issues. Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
everyone.
Commissioner. So our next, part of the budget adjustment is, on IT. I don't, Secretary, you're not going to stay for the ERP.
No,
I hate ERP. It sounds like a gas one.
I know, it is a strange acronym, but it's state government, so we have to have one.
Can I get diagnosed?
I think so.
Sarah Clark, I'll be here, but.
Right, I know that, and the ADF secretary.
Yes.
Will be here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good to see you again.
I know.
So Vinnie, do you want to take a break?
No.
Until three?
There's nobody here.
I know, do we have a show?
So, the one thing that I do think that we're just trying to figure out how we, get to getting the budget adjustment wrapped up. Obviously, the House is working on it, right now. I don't know, is it coming up for a vote today or tomorrow? We have some information. We have the one page kind of highlights of what they've done. Needless to say, the administration has some concern because they basically took the 29 million upgrade and has spent it. So we have to go back through, and we didn't do our human services part of the budget adjustment as it was proposed to either close or hold. I had hold on the veterans home, but I think after the testimony, I think we felt that those are all pretty straightforward and we could close out that section
Yep.
on our sheet. And we ended up having to, the end sections we did too as well. And then we're gonna have to look at some of the language.
What is this one for you two that you have?
This is the one pager like we always do. It's sort of the cliff notes of what's in it.
Oh, Janko wants
I'm gonna join it
to you.
Do we have that?
It's not posted on ours.
No, the only reason I happen to have it is I think somebody Diane gave it to me. Representative Langford gave it to me.
So is
They were
that
so
how
working.
the House is done?
And it's the House version of the BAA. It's what they will give out, saying what's in it. And, some of the things like, we need to revisit, do we want to do that? And, there's moving money to VHCB. There, like last year, we decided that we didn't want to do a number of, what was in the House version in the BAA. We wanted to deal with it in the big bill when we had a better understanding. For example, the organic farms were, they had an appropriation of the BAA. We pulled it out and said, this is something that really has to be evaluated in the context of the big bill. So there may be things that we would want to say, at this point, we want to make the decision within the BAA, not obligate the money in the BAA, but deal with it in the budget. Some of the things that we're seeing actually were not funded in last year's budget. But committees are using it as an opportunity to come back and have another opportunity for the funding. The question is, we're gonna have to say, do we want to revisit decisions that we made last year in the budget development process, moving it forward in the BAA? The governor's budget for 25 uses that upgrade. So if you use it in the BAA and the governor's proposing to fund it, you can't use it
I
twice.
wonder what you do.
And so we're gonna have to make some choices about, are these the kinds of decisions that we might wanna make in the context of the BAA? Or do we wanna simply say, those are the kinds of decisions that should more appropriately be made in the budget where you're balancing out all priorities?
Sound like the governor wants to raise taxes.
So, the anticipated carry forward is used in
We had a $29 million upgrade in the general fund forecast, and they spent it here.
So we aren't gonna have that to carry forward in
The House. What I'm saying is, the governor, on the other hand, did his BAA long before the upgrade, and he's using the 29 million in the 25 budget.
Yeah, well.
So we're going to have to kind of crosswalk, because you can't spend that 29 million, multiple times.
Well, people would like to.
Yeah.
But how do you spend money that you don't have? How can we spend 29 million in the supplemental when we don't know 100% that we're gonna even have that from June 30th that's anticipated?
No, this is the official forecast. This is the forecast. Yes, but that's what we always build the budget on, a
The
forecast.
supplemental or the next year's budget?
This is this year,
Yeah.
this coming 25 budget, we have the forecast upgrade. The 29 is for this current year. And out of the 29 million, we asked the economists how much of it is ongoing and how much of it's still sort of that one-time blip from all those federal dollars inflating state revenues. And the answer was probably about 10 million, a third would be available for base ongoing. And the other 2/3 is really a one-time. The House is using it all in a one-time way.
I'd just say we, as the Senate Appropriations Committee and the Senate as a whole, might have other uses other than what the House has done or the governor. So,
Really?
we might wanna hold our fire till the end and make a decision based on what we want.
Well, we always do, Senator Watson.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a good time not to spend everything.
Well, my only point is, when we get the bill from the House, we're gonna have to undertake that very discussion around, do we want to hold that? Or is there something here we want to move? And we'll see, there's some things that got added, for example, there's one-time funding for the Vermont Food Bank, $1 million, that was not in the governor's. The question is, and we had already put money in the budget for food banks. I think that was maybe 3 million or something we ended up with. So those are the kinds of decisions that we're gonna have to make next week, after we get the bill over from the other body, as they say. And some of the things that we're closed out, we'll actually close them out at some of these things here, and then the others will have to have discussion. There's also language that we'll go over, and I think we'll probably have Jen Carvey in, and that has to do with the Vermont Strong license plates. And you may remember that there was some discussion because the administration had not only declared the level of the fee, the $35, and setting fees is really a revenue issue. And the earlier Vermont Strong plates had money going to the Vermont Food Bank, and the governor's executive order directed it to the Community Foundation for a different purpose. And that led to the letter from leadership that basically said, you know, the authority to raise revenues and the authority to appropriate resides in the legislative branch.
Thank you.
And so there is language in the BAA that basically sets the fee, but also I believe will simply say any revenues after this becomes effective flows to the general fund, and then the legislature will determine where those revenues are appropriated. So I just want to let you know that that's something that we have had some earlier discussion about the separation of powers.
Right.
And there is language around those plates that I think we will have Jen Carvey come in and talk about it, but the power to raise revenues and the power to appropriate in the Constitution, regardless of the amount, rests in the legislative branch. So it's sort of like the sale of the airport. I mean, the purchase of land for the airport, not the sale. So that's just some heads up of
Feel strongly about that.
what,
I feel strongly about that.
what is that?
That it's our power, not his.
About the constitutional,
Yeah.
the Constitution, pretty important. So I would
It's
just,
also pretty,
We can amend the Constitution.
I'm saying, when you feel like it.
so I think what we, this just helped highlight what the House did relative to the governor's proposed. There's also a sheet, that tracks the money, what the governor proposed, that sheet right here. Yeah, that we can work through as well, because this helps show what the difference is between what was proposed by the administration and what was actually included in the BAA that's to us. So we'll give you that sheet, yeah.
And then there's the language stuff on the CON, are we gonna look at that, you think?
Yeah, we can look at that, and, anybody who's got something like the CON, or what, to make sure that it doesn't get forgotten, kind of keep a list of what needs to be done in the BAA, because of the time sensitivity. I had the head of the chamber, I think it's, well, anyway, there's a letter that's come out from all the businesses relative to the concern over the projected rate of school spending and what that will mean to the tax rate.
Yeah.
And if voters in the town vote that level of spending, I was approached, but somehow we should put something in the budget adjustment. And it's like, I don't know whether any of you have been approached, but it seems like we've got
What was it?
hearing. I don't know.
Wording, or they want?
I don't know if there's some remedy in terms, but so I just don't know whether any of you have been approached. My response is, we have not had any discussions. We're not the committee that has really dealt with the nuances of spending, calculating yields, setting rates, and that if the BAA were the requested vehicle, whatever happened would come from the recommendation of those committees.
They're doing a joint meeting.
And they're doing a joint education, finance, ways and means today.
People were proposing something like an excess spending penalty, but there's no way, how do you know if it's driven by inflation? And they have no choice but to go to 7% or 8%, as opposed to a community like the one that you read, Jane, posted on Front Porch Forum, where they seemed to be actively gaining the above 5%.
So there's
Mount
been,
Mansfield School District,
yeah, so
Sorry.
there's been,
Mount Mansfield School.
but the intent of the 5% cap protection was, at least the intent was to protect those towns that were going to be really adversely, negatively affected by the weighting.
Yeah.
And not to create this open framework for what has been perceived as free money, which basically would mean if you're protecting, as I understand it, residential property, then your non-residential property, which would be Vermont businesses, people own apartment houses, so that would get translated into rent. And other non-residential property would have to bear anything above the 5%. So in the bill that came out of the Senate, there was like a 5-year transition period, and there was protection, and the language was around those, specifically, the intent was around those towns
Yeah.
that would have that adverse impact because of the weighting. But it's not, because of what ended up being passed, I guess, it's much more expansive, but not the intent. So I don't know whether anything will come to us. I'm just trying to keep you up to date on, whether you've had people approach you or whatever.
Well, I think the governor made clear that, we can control it, and I don't know. That if your taxes go up by 18%, what do you do?
But I think
If they go up 18%, then.
Blame your legislator, when in reality.
These are the ones from back.
And that's what's gonna happen, that's why we've gotta deal with that issue somehow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I
And there
could
was a
see,
letter that went out, a joint letter, by the two chairs, Senator Cummings and Representative Kornheiser, basically saying that the 5%, I mean, what is happening was never the intent of that protection. But how that would influence the development of school budgets, is yet to be determined.
there isn't a single town yet that has set their school tax rate. That, they don't do that until town meeting.
Right.
Well, I mean, I spent a lot of years on the school board. And we never had our budget done in December when the tax commissioner sets the rate. So he's using I don't like using the numbers or where they come from, but they aren't accurate figures, they're estimates.
That's
and
right, until
guesstimates.
it happens.
But I
But
do
what
know,
seems to be happening, Bobby, as I understand it, is that based on what we got from the copy of that letter, is that that the potential is that the projection that went out in December, in fact, might be low because of this pervasive feeling that you're protected on the residential at 5%, so the money's free.
well,
And then
I've
And
I've
there is a
also
review
been
unless you-
moderator for many years in my own town meeting. And we used to have long school meetings, arguing over the expenditures and in the last 5 years, I would say no more than 10 minutes was spent on the school budget. Because it's all coming, the money, they set the budget at home and the money comes from down here.
Right.
So they don't really feel the pinch.
You don't see the connection between what
No,
they're doing and
and-
what they're getting.
Somehow, there's gotta be a connection built in there somehow, because we're gonna take it on the chin if that stays at 18% or whatever.
Well, now they've got it down to 17.3, right?
Well, that was just a recalculation.
Right, but I mean, we keep saying 18, maybe we should start at least saying 17.
It sounds a lot,
Well, a lot-
but 18's better.
Except I think that even the 17.3 was based on
Yeah.
not fully understanding what that 5% cap has done, or what it's done.
The letters that Ann and the other lady from the council should be going to the local school boards. I don't know where.
It did.
Sent to all school board members.
It did.
Because they got a smart knot.
It really should go to the superintendents.
Well,
I think it
I'm sure
probably
that's,
is.
it's all the same.
But they're all, anyway, there's
But
testimony going
The
on.
letter was a good letter.
And we'll see how, like, whether we have something that goes into the VA, I don't know. I'm just simply trying to keep you up to
Well, if
date.
something comes out of the discussion across the hall, maybe something.
So,
No, they're not, the house hasn't done it. It was from the
Yeah, won't for a while, because
but not in the VA.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna do second reading tomorrow. With the.
yeah. So, I'm just thinking, we can go through, we don't have any time right now, but we do have to go back to human services and you don't want to start them on the, end of the afternoon, although some might be much more straightforward than others. We do have a few that we are holding. But the, one was the vet's home, and we closed that out based on the testimony that we had. So we've really gone through quite a bit of the sheet at this point. And we can take, I don't know, let's take a break, we can go offline.